Oh, okay. Jen, do you want to introduce?
I'm Jen Maxwell. I'm the K2 this year, math coach. I'm Stacey Daly. I'm the 3rd through 5th grade and 6th grade for a little bit longer math coach this year.
And I'm Carol Sullivan, the K-8 math coordinator.
And I'm Stephanie from Yadi, 7th through 12th language arts.
So we're saving Stephanie till the end after we've gone through our math work. And if you take a look at the screen, this is the introduction to the work in mathematics. So I'm gonna progress from there, and it just does not like us. Okay,
Just did it.
we just did it. Never does. Let's see. Let me see if something in here, but it's the trim.
I apologize for my tardiness, but I will point out I was within 2 minutes late.
There you go.
Okay, so try it a different way. Okay. See if this might work. There we go.
Here it is.
So, yeah. I did just switch to. Okay, so go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, so I just want to say good evening and thank you for having us tonight. I think it was, I don't remember, we just talked about this 8 or 9 months ago that we were here just sharing some of our curriculum updates. And we're happy to be back tonight, as Gail mentioned, to go ahead and share with you our finalized K6 math documents. If we look back at our story, I know Gail talked about the last 20 years, but it's been about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year that these revisions have been going on. We started as a K-12 math team. We came together because we really felt that our guiding document needed some revisions. So we needed to clean it up and make it a little more friendly, a little cleaner. So I know Carol's going to talk about that in a little bit more in just a moment. But we started with cleaning up that document. And from there, we spent time looking at each grade level and looking at each unit and going ahead and taking each unit and aligning it to the new profile of the graduate capacities, updating the essential questions and the enduring understandings. And from there, we pulled together groups of teachers. Now, none of this work, I'm sure you've heard this over and over again, couldn't be done with these amazing teachers. They're living these documents every single day, so their input is so important to us. So we pulled together some fabulous teams throughout the school year and then all through this past summer to then really dive into the nitty-gritty of all of these units. So we started first, hang on, let me, so, I want to say, so we focused on looking at the priority math standards for each of the units. And honestly, when you went building to building and our teachers were so comfortable with these units over the last few years that sitting in a data team, sitting in a PLC, I think we already had a handle on where our curriculum was lacking and where we really needed to improve our focus. So as I get into some of the further slides, I think you'll see that we really knew what direction we needed to go in each of the grade levels with these units. Some of the grades, we just cleaned up some of the PBAs. You'll hear Gail talk about rigor. We just may have added some questioning to increase the level of rigor in some of our performance-based assessments. Some grade levels, we scrapped a couple PBAs, and then I think you'll hear that some grade levels, we reworked all of our performance-based assessments in the units. And one thing to point out, that one last thing that I want to point out is that in our grade 3 through 6 units, we also spent some time making sure that we embedded some standardized testing formatting just to get our students comfortable with those SBAC testing. So it wasn't in their face. They really didn't know. We had some of our assessments that we just changed wording of the assessment questions just to make it more aligned to what it was being done in the SBAC. So they heard some of the vocabulary, some of the language. So you'll hear some of that from our 3-6 units. Thank you.
Okay, as Jen mentioned, our first step was to take a look at the guiding document. I was thinking, Gail, when we started this, we did not have EduPlanet. We changed this guiding document many times. So it was the first time the district had done it with ELA and with math. So there was a lot of learning that was going on sort of as an organization and as a math team. And so when we were looking at it this time, we were really nitpicking, I would say, about whether we could stand behind it. And this guiding document is supposed to be the K through 12 learning that happens for all the kids, which is sort of hard to wrap your head around at first, that a kindergartner and a junior in high school are doing the same math, but in a way they are the meaningful part, what they're going to take beyond the schooling. So we looked at it to make sure it aligned with the new portrait of the graduate capacities. We updated and aligned the understandings, the transfer goals. And again, I think that when we keep coming back to it, it highlights what's important, the problem solving, being to understand how to take a problem, take it apart, and move forward with it. On the next slide, we have analyzing, and we just kind of brought that to the forefront for this meeting because it's used so often in math. With those capacities over and over, we go to analyzing, we try to push ourselves to get away from it, but we feel like this is math. On the next slide, we have a version that would be more student friendly or more appropriate for, this is 4th through 6th grade, even though it depends, right? Third.
Yeah.
The aspects of analyzing that we try to emphasize with the students that we feel like they're going to see throughout their lives is taking a problem, being able to break it into parts, sift through it, organize it, look for patterns, make sense of the information, problem solve, look at the answer, decide whether the answer does make sense. So to really answer that, when am I ever going to use that question? That's how we see it.
And then, this piece I thought might be helpful just to kind of review and to understand. So this is called depth of knowledge scale. And I think at the last meeting or the last couple of meetings, we were talking about standardized test scores. And the difference between math and ELA, there is a difference in testing between math and ELA on the Smarter Balanced. If you look at the Smarter Balanced, there's 2 components to it. So one's that computer assisted technology, right? So that's the multiple choice, the fill in the blank, the highlighting. And if you look here at the depth of knowledge, and I love that the camera's up so I can walk up, you can see that the focus is on facts, definitions, details, and the focus in what we call a DOK2 is skill and concept. It's on applying the skills and concepts, explaining how and why. There's one correct answer here. There's one correct answer here. But now when you get into the more complex thinking and the stuff that's actually applicable, you can see that there's multiple answers or approaches in a DOK3 and a DOK4. And the students are now challenged to think about reasoning and planning and looking at complex and abstract thinking and really defend their reasons or their conclusions. So this is important to understand because in ELA, the Smarter Balanced assessment only assesses at this level. It does not assess at this level because it has no performance tasks. So you can hear the team talk about our authentic performance assessments. Those are models that are really complex and longer answers that really require students to apply it and to get to some of those big ideas that we were talking about in the slide before. So in the Smarter Balanced in math, the kids are practicing this in every unit, and they're able to demonstrate it because it is a performance task in math. In ELA, they are not able to go to that level. And I think that's large in part due to the scoring difficulties. So I did want to share that with you because it is part of our curriculum design for all areas of study that kids have to go down or up to that DLK 3 and 4, so they are applying their learning. So this slide I'm going to have Stacy explain. It's probably hard to see, so you might have to look at your pockets.
So these are examples from a fourth grade unit. It's actually the second unit of the year in fourth grade, which is a multiplication and division unit. But the top example there is a transfer task, and it's really a multi-step word problem. There's one answer to it, and they're applying their understanding of multiplication in a real world situation, but there's only one correct answer, as Gail said. So therefore, it's really more of that. It's probably a DOK 2 because it's a word problem and not just solving a multiplication problem. But again, that one answer part keeps it at that 2 level. But then at the bottom, you see the instructions for our PBA, in which they're designing a birthday party for themselves, and they have to write a letter to or explain to their parents why they should be able to have this birthday party and how much it's going to cost. And we've chosen real places that they can choose from. We've given them admission fees. They have to buy items for party bags. They have to feed everybody. But they have to come up with a cost, and they have to also tell you how many kids they're going to bring with themselves. And so here you're seeing like they're still doing that multiplication and addition, but there's a plethora of answers, which can sometimes make it hard to score, but the kids love it because, yes.
Is this an individual activity or a group activity?
This particular one's individual. So we do have some that are group, but this one's individual. And it's, you can see them doing that applying of those multiple skills into solving one problem and applying that understanding they've learned in the unit. Yay, back to me. So I'm super excited to share with you the updates in K2 right now. First of all of the teachers are at the point where they're either just finished the first unit or they're about to finish the first unit, and the feedback we're getting is awesome. The teachers really like the revisions we've made, and they're seeing a difference. Again, I'm going to go back to what I talked about in that introduction about the priority standards. And our teachers, as we sit in our PLC meetings, again, as I mentioned, and the data team meetings, we always talk about our students' strengths and where our weaknesses are. And we always have a plethora of strengths. Our students were doing great with addition. They had great number sense, but we noticed that there was always this pattern of the teachers were always saying, well, their subtraction is a little weak, or, they need more support with problem solving. So we knew that there was obviously something lacking in our curriculum, and that was repeating over and over again. So we knew that those priority standards were areas we really needed to improve upon in our curriculum. And it was a wonderful timing that the middle school started using the illustrative math program, because it gave us access to be able to go ahead and look at some of those lessons. And we found some amazing lessons that really complemented the work we already had to be able to build into the lessons to strengthen those areas that we felt like we were a little bit weak in. We also decided we really needed to relook at some of our PBAs. Again, you hear me talk about that level of rigor. We might have gone in and asked the kids to explain their thinking a little bit more, or why does this work? At the kindergarten level, that's obviously just a very verbal discussion that you have with them. But we noticed that the teachers kept coming to us in the PLCs and during these meetings, and they were talking to us about the kids struggling with PBAs, these performance-based assessments at the end of the unit. And it wasn't that they were struggling with the content, but they were struggling with their perseverance, and they just wanted to give up at times with these. So we decided that one area that we really needed to focus on in our units was increasing that level of rigor and building in more open-ended, engaging problem-solving tasks throughout the unit so that our kids are more successful when they get to those tasks at the end of the unit. It's been amazing. We've already seen a change in some of our teachers and the way they're adding those. teachers have now made self-awareness their professional growth goal this year. Because they want to work on perseverance, and we're seeing that a lot of teachers are actually choosing self-awareness or perseverance as a coaching goal right now in math, which I love to see. So you'll see here that third grade is separated out just because we wanted to highlight some of the changes that went on with third grade in particular. One of the things that we did with third grade as we rewrote it is we revised the order of the units. And like Jen said, in PLCs and in different discussions over the years, we felt like the kids needed to have all of the addition and subtraction up front. It had been more spread out over the course of the year, but that would really assist later on in the year as they were doing more of the multiplication and division. And we did find that really helped as we did this last year. We also rewrote the multiplication and division units, so there are two of them completely, to really make a stronger connection between the two. It had been kind of a multiplication unit, then a couple other units, then come back and do division. And what we found is by doing the two side by side, that the kids got a stronger understanding of division. Division kind of has been a weaker skill, and similar to what Jen said with subtraction, we wanted to build up students' understanding of division. Similar to K2, we revised a lot of the PBAs to increase their rigor, and you'll see the picture that's there is a 3-act task from Graham Fletcher, and we had Graham Fletcher in a couple times for PD. And in that 3-act task, you start by presenting the students with a short video clip. And in this case, they're pouring ketchup into small bottles, but just starting to show you that. He only gets to about 1 ketchup bottle. And then the problem presented to these kids is if your ketchup bottle holds 397 grams of ketchup, how many small bottles that are 64 grams would you be able to fill? And so it's really interesting to see how differently the kids approach this type of problem. Most of them actually don't subtract, although some do. A lot of them add up. So it's kind of interesting to see how they go about it. And similar to K2, we also looked at illustrative math lessons for those areas where we felt that our curriculum needed to be increased, that we were not covering topics quite as strongly. So 4th and 5th grade also went through quite a few revisions over the last 2 years. Similarly, we rewrote a lot of the PBAs in 5th grade, and they're almost entirely new. In both grades, similar to 3rd grade, we reordered some of the units. In 4th grade, we brought addition and subtraction up a little bit earlier. They had been fairly late in the year, and that's the year where they learned the standard algorithm, what all the parents are waiting for. And in 5th grade, we made the decision to move all of the multiplication and division up earlier. And we were thrilled last year by that decision because it made a huge difference as they were doing work with fractions, which is a large part of the 5th grade curriculum. One of the things we did last year, partially because of our time with COVID, but partially just because of changes that had occurred over time with different decisions, was we put a much greater emphasis on fact fluency. We had kind of lost that emphasis on it. At Brown last year and this year, we've been fortunate to have one of our paraprofessionals assist myself and Michelle Horn with some math and ELA tier 1. And we've had that person doing a lot of fact fluency work. It's a lot of playing games and a lot of looking at visual models, because those visual models really help the kids to retain their understanding of the facts. So when you hear fact fluency, it's not drill and kill time tests, but we are seeing an improvement in the kids' ability to do math overall, because if you free up the working memory from trying to find those facts, they do better in problem solving. For 5th grade, geometry is often that last unit of the year that kind of gets squeezed in and a little forgotten. So we took it and spread it out over the course of the year and cover it in the part of math that we call number corner. So number corner is a piece of Bridget. It's a shortened piece where they're covering things with the calendar grid and collecting different items. And by moving geometry over the course of the year, we're able to give those topics a little more emphasis than we had in the past. Like 3rd grade, we're using 3-act tasks in both grades, which helps develop that problem solving understanding that Jen was talking about. And likewise, we've added a lot of some illustrative mathematics lessons in areas where we didn't have enough material.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
In what grades are they assessed with like the standardized testing across the state, and is there some emphasis placed on front loading? Like, is some of the timing that you're talking about that you've rearranged coordinated with getting them some better knowledge of stuff that's going to be tested so that they can show their knowledge better?
It absolutely is. So it's 3rd through 8th grade. And it definitely is. That's one of the decision points that went into some of where we moved material. We looked at what were priority standards and which ones weren't. And so I can tell you for 5th grade in particular, geometry wise and data wise, we made sure that we're covering coordinate graphing and that we're covering the qualities of 2D shapes and polygons prior to SBAC, but after SBAC, we're covering some things related to patterns within coordinate graphing. It's not a priority standard. I mean, we need to teach it. It may be tested, but it's not likely to be covered to the extent of something like multiplying and dividing fractions.
I also greatly appreciate, and I think others probably agree, because we've talked about it as a board. I greatly appreciate the effort to infuse the SBAC testing style questions into the curriculum, so that we're not teaching to the test in terms of curriculum, but we're giving the kids the tools to actually perform better on the computerized model testing. So
that was
that's
definitely
great.
something we've learned over the years, that it wasn't fair when we just kind of gave the kids the test and they weren't familiar with the questions. And it wasn't that they didn't know the content, but they had never seen the way it was formatted before. So we definitely have done that.
It's never great to confront something for the first time
No.
in a test.
Right.
You know what has also helped just a system, the test now is later in the year. It used to be in March that we were testing, and now that month is really May. And that has made a big difference, because we used to think, okay, you kind of gotta get it done by March, and now by May, if it's comfortable. There's a little bit of a squeeze, but it is comfortable.
And I think part of that is philosophical. I do credit the new administration for reconsidering that, because that was a choice. And as I understand it, you can choose as a district when to fit the S back in. And we were cramming it way in the beginning in the past, but now we moved it further out. And I think it gives our kids a fighting chance as well to show what they learned at those appropriate grade levels. Thank you.
Okay, so 6th grade. Last year was our first year of full implementation of illustrative mathematics in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 6th grade had the opportunity to pilot some units in 2019, 2020 before we shut down. And then again in the spring of 2021. So they had more experience than 7th and 8th grade had with the illustrative lessons. So it was our first full year, but it wasn't really our first year with illustrative mathematics. You'll see the list of the units here that we cover. Illustrative mathematics really takes a problem-based approach to teaching math. And so one of the things that happens is the kids are working in small groups, anywhere from 2 to 4 students. This year, we've been doing a lot of experimenting after having read some research on doing random grouping. And so pulling popsicle sticks and saying, this is your partner for today. And the kids then work together on a rich math problem, very real world. A lot of tuna casseroles coming up in the ratio units in the next unit. And after the children have the opportunity to solve the problem with their small group or partners, the whole class comes back together, looks at some examples of how the student solved the problem, and then the teacher does a summary of those key math concepts to kind of hit on what we're expecting them to learn out of what they did, but they're really having that opportunity to grapple with it before we're telling them this is how it works. So a little bit different from how you would think of a traditional math approach to teaching things. And that's kind of how the structure of the lessons go. For this grade in particular, we pretty much rewrote every PBA. We used some things that we had done in the past and created some of those as PBA. Some of them are brand new. We're able to try out a few of them, and some of them will be brand new. On Monday and Tuesday, every 6th grader is designing a candy box for 24 starbursts and then calculating the surface area of that box. So it's really great to see the discussions that occur, and by 6th grade, how much they're capable of and what they're thinking in terms of the math.
Is that me?
Yep.
I know, I didn't have a note on this. All right, so what's happening now and what's happening in the future, I would say this slide is about. We have a new position, a 6 through 8 math coach, Ali Biazda. And then at hand, Justin Kaiser is working with the algebra team. And in both these positions, I would say a main focus is getting the illustrative math up and moving. So the 7th and 8th grade typical math classes. So that's math 7 and grade 8 pre-algebra. Last year, for the first time, did illustrative math from start to finish. We had done bits and pieces, but our order that we had before was different enough from illustrative math that we weren't able to use it easily. So last year was our first year with that group. So this year we are fine-tuning that work, and that curriculum will be ready by June of this school year. At the same time, the 7th grade pre-algebra and the 8th grade algebra are using illustrative math for the first time. And so those two, and at the high school, the algebra is being used for the first time, illustrative math. So all those curriculums would be done by the end of next school year. And that's where we are. We're getting more and more comfortable with illustrative math, figuring out exactly how to make it work for our kids.
So I think there's a couple things I just want to highlight in summary before we turn it over for questions. You hear the term illustrative, you've heard the term bridges, those are programs. And then you hear curriculum, and that's what we do when we examine what our students are doing and what our criteria for success is. So it's really important that the board understands that we can buy stuff, but buying stuff is not enough for what we do. We like to lift the work higher, as you hear around the table, which means that we have to make selections. We have to examine the standards, and we have to understand what's going to be most impactful for our students and how to apply learning all the time for greater purpose. So we don't stop at the door of just knowing the math. We start the adventure at knowing the math, and we conclude the adventure of applying the math in the world. So you can see that it's not quite so simple as opening up a book and turning the pages. And the coaches and coordinators are really leading those discussions with teachers, and they're looking at data. And you can see that also when we write curriculum one time, it's not forever, that we actually have to go back into it, open it up and look at how we supplement it and what else we need and what else we need to be doing, because it is a live document here. It's not something that sits on the shelf. It's not something that our teachers don't use. They do use it. They have voice in it. They do create it. So this is like a perfect example of raising the level of learning. You heard throughout this. Now you know about DOK levels. So you can impress your friends. But we're lifting again the level of learning, and we also are recognizing that our kids need to grow in their self-awareness so they can take risks and they can deal with struggle, right? And that they can persevere through that, and that they're not going to be a puddle because they met something hard. So I want to thank these courageous people in front of you. Carol, I have to mention that Carol was the brave pioneer of curriculum when we first started this journey, and it was not pretty. It was really hard. And Carol was brave enough to step up and say, you know, K through 12, we do need to do this work. And prior to that, we were islands. I mean, this team never met. They were always separate. And you know, we've joined in a great adventure, and I'm very grateful. Very grateful. They're still brave. So now I'll turn it over to everybody before we go on to Stephanie and the ELA.
Thanks so much. Wendy, do we have any members of the public?
No one.
No questions from members of the board?
Just
The
a
committee.
comment, I would like to say thank you for coming this evening, but also, Gail sort of took the words off of my paper. And
I'm
out of my mouth.
sorry.
No, you articulated it beautifully, exactly what I was thinking, the whole idea of, what you have, but what you've shared with us this evening comes with so much conversation, discussion, professional learning communities that gather together, time in your day that you preserve for those discussions. That work is magical, and it really is the secret sauce. You couldn't come up with the idea that perseverance is where you need to focus without really deeply diving into not just data from assessments, but also the actions of students and how they're working together and individually, and how teachers feel about the tools and resources they're using. Taking all of that into consideration, that is deep, important work. And the fact that you do that, it really is action research. You're taking on a daily, like, what's working, what's not working, how can we tweak it, how can we make it better? That's where wonderful, strong, rich curriculum comes from. And of course, like you said, it doesn't stop there. And you don't say, well, we could put the lid on that jar, because it just is always like, so how can we make it better? So to come up with the fact that perseverance and the productive struggle and teaching kids how to do that, that's such a great lifelong skill that they will use, not just for math, but for everything they do. Their marriages, it's my wedding anniversary today. Hey, Joe, happy anniversary, 25 years. But that kind of thing is what they'll take with them to all tasks and everything that they do in life. And it's such a life skill. And thank you for creating space, creating situations, creating opportunities for teachers to have voice, to support the making and creating this beautiful the work that you've done. And I love that it's not really done, that you've only just begun, and that truly is how it feels. And your enthusiasm for the work And the day-to-day coaching that is, I know, is really important work, and I'm so glad that we have a growing coaching model and making space for more. So. Thank
Just
you.
add to that from a slightly more negative aspect. Math stinks. I can tell you, math stinks for me because I never had this kind of teaching when I was a kid. It was sink or swim. When you got to your, Peter principle and you got to like the most you could do in long division and you couldn't get that, the repeating parts or whatever it was, that you were left in a vast ocean of self-doubt at each next successive level, right? And you didn't get the rigor and you didn't get the perseverance training in a comfortable way that helped you to engage with it. And as a result, I personally have a lifelong struggle with math. I hate it. I don't like math problems. I can do enough to get along in life. But I can't really I couldn't coach my kids coming up very well. Because as soon as I got done with it, I put it out of my mind. And that it's a shame. It's a real shame that math was taught in such a rote way. And still may be around the country. But I just am so excited for our kids that you guys take the time and put in the effort and the thought and come up with the programs you use, the planning around that, the specific specialization beyond just the basic program that we do with our curriculum planning is just beyond sensational. And you're all to be commended. Thank you very much. And I hope there's a whole generation of Madison students who don't think math stinks.
I have to say, we had a presenter, Greg Tang, back at the beginning of teaching this way. And we were at the high school auditorium with Guilford. We were both kind of launching this different kind of way of thinking about math. And the parents were really anxious. And one woman stood up and said, I don't understand anything that my kids are doing. I have no idea what they're doing, and I'm not able to help them. And Greg Tang said, well, do you think you're good at math? And she said, no, I'm horrible at math. He goes, why would you want your kids to learn the same way you did? And I thought it was just the most impressive comment. And I was like, oh yeah, that really does raise a point. So it might make us uncomfortable, but it sure isn't making them uncomfortable.
Really appreciate your presentation from a number of standpoints. And I don't want to parrot what's already been said, but I totally agree with the other members of the board in terms of their comments. The level of reflection on the work and where the students is critical. But what's most important to me, I feel acutely that the future our kids are going out to, math is a language they have to master for their world. The world I was growing up with, and that Seth refers to, mostly we worked hard at math so we could get good test scores and SATs and get into good schools and whatever. The world they're going into, they need to be able to think mathematically. So, as I listen carefully to your presentation and the focus in terms of outcomes and thinking and perseverance and conceptual knowledge, that's what I listen for. And that's what I was hearing. I have an open question and we probably don't have sufficient time for it, but I wonder from the standpoint of the classroom teacher, how they work that balance between a curriculum material such as the illustrative math, that has its strength and its foundation and its adherence, how you find the balance between when is the time for that, what is the degree that we use that, how much of it is the group work and the kinds of things that program promotes, and how much, how those decisions are made. Are those individual teacher decisions? Are those department decisions?
I could talk about that a little bit because we're going through it right now, and it'll always change, but in our curriculum documents, the last part of it is the learning plan. And so we, in 7th and 8th grade right now, and we do it in the other grades too, but we've been working from a Google Doc that we're all able to change easily. And in our regular meetings, and you mentioned it, Catherine, but the fact that we meet so regularly as a team, teachers, coordinator, coach, that is essential because we can meet regularly. So we're meeting twice a week for this, to talk about specifics of each lesson, the good and the bad. And I think our goal is to sometimes push it when the teachers are not comfortable with something. Sometimes we all change is hard, so push it a little bit and to stick with it. And then other times we do have to step back and say, well, wait, is it right? Just because I think there's a lot of chatter about this curriculum, illustrative math right now. It's not perfect. And so to take the brave move of saying, we don't think it's right. You went through it with the division in 6th grade of fractions. They went through it the first time. It was a bit of a mess. And so the second time they did major tweaks on that. And we appreciate the ability to make those decisions and not just follow it completely, because I think these curriculum, these programs are written for everybody in the United States, and we're not everybody. And so that's a little balancing act. And then once the document's written, that's part of our job, is to oversee that it is being followed. So if a teacher has a different lesson to do, I would say encourage that, especially if it goes well, and then the whole group can use it. So it's a little, you don't want these teachers to lose the art of teaching. That a lot of that planning is the fun part.
That's, part of what guides my question.
Yeah.
And I think kind of building off what Carol said within those PLCs, sometimes it depends on the group of kids we have in front of us. So what worked one year with one particular group of kids, the next year, that group of kids may need something a little bit different. And so the teachers are really good at working with us to adjust things based on the kids' needs as well.
I think you're hearing a direct relationship between the investment in our professionals and them being able to act as professionals and make judgment as professionals. So, professional development, that's something that the board's always supported. And we front load with a lot of professional development before they go to write and try. So we're not saying, here's a bunch of stuff, turn the page, do what it says. We're actually elevating, lifting the learning with us as professionals first, and then taking risks in front of each other and looking for success and failure and building upon success for more success. So it's really the description of curriculum versus materials is what you're hearing.
Well, and I also think that because of the way the curriculum model works here, it ensures that at least to some great degree, there's consistency in the approach across classrooms within a building, across buildings in the same grades.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, there's that parity and that equity that goes.
That's a huge part. So that really is important to us too. Because when Stacy and Jennifer sat down, they were telling you, actually, I don't think you were here yet, but they were talking about when they first were onboarded, and there was no curriculum, and they just kind of developed it individually. And that's a big difference.
That's a huge point. I mean, what you see in lots of schools, that's called a guaranteed curriculum. But what you see in lots of schools is what gets covered depends on who you have.
Right. Which isn't right. Right. Yeah, and you're right, and that's still not right. Yep.
Right, and so wrong.
Yeah.
But also that power of coaching, and I think that is so important. Having teaching can be so isolating. Teachers, get their curriculum, they're told, here's what we're going to do, here's the first unit, this is the time frame. And then, if you don't have coaches in the building, you're kind of like trying to have at it without, it's like Tom Brady not, having to go out and figure out how to, he has like 17 different types of coaches, like a food coach and a throwing coach and weightlifting and meditation. And the fact that we have coaches that provide the, as you talked about that PD that's front loading, but that embedded shoulder to shoulder, rolling your sleeves up as a team type of work is really where that action is, and all of that information that it's data gathering in the moment. It's just so powerful and important. And I love that our district embraces the coaching model, because it really, when you have strong coaches like you, all, and when there's time and importance put on that, it is everything. And I just am so impressed by the work that you've done.
Spoken like a true coach.
I know.
Mother.
Yes, we do. So,
It does feel good to support the coach.
if the math people want to leave, they can, or they can stay. Yeah. So,
We're alone, so.
you can slide.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, Stephanie Fumiati is a regular, here at our committee. Welcome her back, and, I think it's back to the presentation, Wendy.
Oh.
That's okay. I can help you. So Stephanie is here. Selena De Silva is actually on a NEAS visit. So she is the coordinator at the high school. So she and Stephanie have been working hand in hand, along with the teachers at the high school, on some really exciting changes to our high school programming. So it has been a journey, as all curriculum is. And Stephanie's here to review with us the changes at the high school. So there's two courses that we're presenting for you tonight. One is world literature with an interesting twist. I'll put a twist on that. And the other is our humanities course, which is a co-taught course. So I'll ask Stephanie to start presenting, and we'll bring up your slides. I don't think that one's the word. Oh, there we go. There you go. Okay, Steph, I'm gonna have you right there. Oops. Oh, I don't
Just
think it'll
have-
share. I can help you. No. It's gonna share.
There you go.
Okay, perfect.
Is it there?
Yes.
Great.
All right. So this is just kind of an overview of the changes that we've made. So for world literature, we had to write, revise, and finalize the entire curriculum for levels 1 and 2. It starts out as world literature and then splits into 2 thematic courses, which I'll explain in a little bit. So those 2 options are courage, hope, and adversity, and real and unreal. For humanities, we also had to revise, update, and finalize that curriculum. It's a level 1 senior elective. It's co-taught with an English teacher and a social studies teacher. History teacher, and it provides 0.5 credit in English and social studies. So sophomore year, students are able to choose between one of the 2 thematic courses. So this kind of ties back to our roots and workshop with the student choice, where they start in trimester 1 in world literature, where they read foundational world literature texts, and then they have the option of trimester 2 being either in courage, hope, and adversity, or in real and unreal. And those courses kind of mirror each other, where the skills that they're working on are similar, but the content is different. So in Courage, Hope, and Adversity, it's a deep dive into how human nature is both universal and cultural. The issues that students encounter in the texts in this course deal with issues that are specific to a particular culture, which in this case is Nigeria in the 1980s. Students are made aware of the dangers of the single story, because while there are aspects of the text that are very specific to Nigeria and the history of modern Nigeria, students can also connect to the main characters' experiences. So this course is specifically for students who prefer realistic fiction. Comparatively, we have Real and Unreal, which dives into magical realism, science fiction, and fantasy. And that course requires students to actively flex their inferencing skills, as analysis is essential to understanding what the text is truly about. So all students take world literature and then they have the option of choosing one of those two courses.
And the idea behind that is to try and capture their particular interest as they make that choice and then use that as the vehicle to pursue the particular skills.
Exactly, yes. Okay, so the skills focused across this course in trimester 1, which is that world literature course. They're reading that foundational literature. They're working to understand dense texts from a variety of places, cultures, and time periods, and they're building their contextual understanding of cultures to promote in-depth analysis. So that's that trimester 1 work. And then as they split into those two courses, they'll be working on building research skills to analyze informational texts, effectively using databases, supporting fiction reading with informational texts. They'll also be understanding dense texts from a variety of places, cultures, and time periods, and an analysis of time, place, and culture to understand both the universal and specific thematic ideas. So that will just look differently because it's dependent on what type of text the students are working on. And then the writing skills, we've woven in narrative writing across the entire year for that college essay work. And then also analytical writing, leading to literary analysis that uses informational text to support the understanding of literature. One of the things that we've been working on in this course is the diversification of our texts. So we have a mix of contemporary and classic texts that build off of the 2 years leading up to this course, where students have been learning to navigate challenging texts. So in trimester 1, it includes a variety of options beyond the more traditional texts, such as the Odyssey and the Epic of Gilgamesh. While students begin those texts, they soon branch out to other foundational stories from a wide variety of places, which all of those are listed in the units. Trimester 2 courses, so the Real and Unreal and Courage Open Diversity, they're diversified through a wide range of short stories used as models, mentor texts, and group texts. Those short stories include non-white authors, including those from Asia and Latin America. Additionally, whole class texts and book club offerings have been thoughtfully chosen to include non-white authors as well as female authors. Okay, now we'll move into humanities. I have to say, when I was first started in Madison, I was teaching language arts and social studies at the same time. So when I had the opportunity to kind of work on this curriculum, it was kind of this full circle moment of seeing like what it looked like in 5th grade and now up at the high school. So this course is co-taught. So we have an English teacher and a social studies teacher in the class at the same time. I actually just was able to, I'm in a coaching cycle with one of the teachers right now, and I was just able to sit in one of the classes, and the energy level was so exciting in that classroom. It was just really awesome to see. It's a 2 trimester course where students, they earn 0.5 credit in English and 0.5 in social studies. And really the goal of this course is to contextualize and understand history more deeply through the literature, but then also to better understand the literature through history. So our goal
Is this the first year doing this?
No, this has been ongoing. We just revised it though. The course goals are to comprehend and analyze primary and secondary sources, comprehend and analyze literature, art, and music, to utilize effective research strategies to understand the literature in that historical context. And then also that they'll leave this course with a deeper understanding of the past and how history influences modern day society. And lastly, this slide just kind of gives you an overview of the units that students will be going through. So the focus of each unit and kind of just what that actually looks like. So for the first unit is real versus ideal, thinkers versus producers, where students are studying philosophers and their philosophies, their close reading primary sources versus close reading a piece of literature. And then it's the introduction to synthesizing literature and history. The second unit is religions and their tenets, so studying the various religions to elevate common ideas and differences, promoting a deeper understanding of the human experience through religion and historical events. And then finally, we end the year with a unit, or the course with a unit focused on power. which is a close reading of a primary, secondary sources and literature at the same time, and navigating a variety of texts to understand how fiction and reality intersect.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Can I ask, especially on areas of history and religion, my family's personal experience has been that sometimes some, to put it charitably, some undiplomatic discourse can occur in the classrooms. I'm just wondering, is there a curriculum-based response to kind of keep kids in bounds and to try and encourage them to keep the focus of discussion kind of in a good area?
One of the things that we actually worked on this past summer with Kate Roberts was creating a respectful discourse learning progression. So we mapped out what it would look like at like the Madison standard, or what our expectation is when we're talking about tough topics. What are our expectations for kids? How can they ask questions appropriately? How can they share their ideas, question things, build off of their peers in that conversation? So we created this progression, and we've been slowly bringing that across kind of like the K-12 world and into other subject areas as well. So social studies has also been using it. And that's something that's all student-facing language. So that's something that we can teach into. Students have it in front of them and say, like, it's almost like checking the list of, am I kind of entering this conversation in the right way?
Because I, one of our other board members who is across the aisle from me, let's say politically, has stated in the past, and I absolutely agree, that ideally there should be open dialogue about things. And I think that's one of the best things in today's day and age, especially, that we can instill in our students, is the capacity to be able to discuss difficult subjects, and subjects that are very polarizing, agreeably and without trampling on each other. And as long as again, as long as it's kept within bounds, because sometimes you'll get a student who will say something that's completely out of bounds
I think
and inappropriate.
I think the meeting prior to this one, or two prior, we talked about alternate perspectives and how we were growing the global thinking.
Yeah.
And the biggest change between the curriculum that you met tonight and the first iteration is exactly in that arena.
Great.
Even by selection of texts and authors, this is, how much we've grown in the period of time. And also our ability to recognize that we need tools like that, and we need to make it transparent to our students. So we continue to do our professional development, have those individuals come in who do this work nationally and internationally, and really help us to employ some really good teaching strategies and resources along with the work that we've done in the curriculum. So it's really more how you go about it and the other supplemental stuff. And that's another example, like that progression that Stephanie talked about is something that is not in a book that you would find or in a collection of stories. It's something that is Madison grown and specific, and work that we value as a local community and global thinking. So it's it's exciting to continue to develop it, but as everything, I have to say, we'll look at that 5 more years and say we can do better than that, and we'll do better than that, but it's better than we were 5 years ago.
And it's just great to have a thoughtful approach to that. And thank you very much. And one last note on this real quick, Steve, if I may, just I was a history major in college, and I love historical fiction and stuff. So this stuff really geeks me out. So thank you.
Not your math jam.
I feel like I have like a leg up being able to go after math.
I think what I took from that, and is key, is that, for the benefit of the students, it's identified as a goal for them in terms of respectful discourse. You know, and I hope there's the expectation of them assessing themselves, you know, on that scale,
Yeah.
you know, in contrast to avoiding difficult topics. Because it can lead to, you know, non-respectful discourse. You know, the world our kids are going out into, they have to struggle with difficult ideas and you know, it's a critical skill set. You know, when you frame something as world literature or humanities, that is at the heart of, you know, their passage out into the world. So I thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
Good job.
Thanks. That's definitely.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, you're good. Unless you want to talk about something in the board.
If not, we adjourn at 6:33.
Thank you.